Tonight, we're going to talk about psychic manners, which is a really fun and pretty advanced topic. So thank you for joining us. This channel is really built on helping you tap into energy. We talk about all things metaphysical, ascension, cosmic, psychic tools. So all these different topics to really help you strengthen your abilities in your own journey wherever you're at. So jumping into tonight's topic of psychic manners, I feel like this is something that's not always talked about in the psychic community. And beginners especially, I feel like, can fall in this trap of being excited about their tools and maybe overstepping bounds. But you know, psychic manners kind of falls into a lot of different categories. So how about, Corey, do you want to kick us off tonight? What would you like to start to share on when it comes to psychic manners? What comes to your mind?
Mind your manners. No. Psychic manners. One of the things that I was taught early on is when you're beginning to learn your tools and do readings, is we get so excited that, that we can see or feel or know, and we start to hone in our reading abilities. And so one of the things is because we get so excited when we get a message for somebody, we have a tendency to just blurt it out. And along the way, I've learned, and others do learn, that it's nice to ask for permission. It could look like or sound like, I'm getting a message for you. Would you like a message? Just as simple as that. But it's hard when you're first learning and, you're just waking up all these senses. We get excited. We want to tell people things. But the psychic manners would be to pause and ask the person permission. You might say, I'm getting a message for you. Would you like a message? That was pretty huge, because some people are like, ugh. But when you ask permission, that's some good psychic manners.
Absolutely. How about you, Peyton? What would you like to share about psychic manners?
Yeah, I think this is such an important topic. And it's funny because it's actually one of the first things I was taught. All of my early teachers were, first things, manners. Let's talk about the ground rules. Because what you don't realize, like the girl said, is you get so excited when you're first starting. And first of all, you want to tell everybody, and then you want to share everything with no filter that comes through. And this can really be very jarring for people who may not be into, this type of information or this practice. And it's a little kind of alarming that someone might know something about you that you don't know. And so we're thinking how excited we are to share the message and not how someone on the other end of it might feel. So the rules that I was always taught 3 rules. The first rule was never to read someone without their consent. Because we are always supposed to ask consent, because we step on free will and we can karmically intertangle ourselves if we are going around poking into other people's business without permission. So that was the first thing that my teachers always told me, is you have to have permission to read someone. But then I was talking to a client about this, and people get very confused as to what does it mean to read someone? Because as you start to do intuitive work, you start to get information around the clock in every situation. Well, does that mean you're reading people without consent? And that's never how I've viewed it. To me, you're reading someone if you are looking for information about them, if you're scanning them, or trying to poke into what they're about, or remote viewing them without their permission. To me, if you're going out and seeking information about someone who hasn't agreed to let you read them, that's kind of like going through someone's purse. It's not done. It's not good form. So the second rule that I was always taught was not to share a message unless you're asked, because this can really alarm people, and it can really be invasive to people that you might be getting personal information about them that they don't know. And so for me, it's always a good idea to, like Corey said, ask them if they would like a message. But there's kind of a spectrum there. If it's a stranger or someone you don't know, that's really on the poor form, to be going up to people you don't know and saying, oh, hi, Mr. Guy at the bus stop. I'm getting that you have cancer in your toe. That's a big no-no. But on the other hand, friends and family who know the type of work that you do, that they love to give readings, then you're probably okay just asking them, like Corey said, would you like a message? Something is coming through for you. And then at least you're giving them the chance to say yes or no. But I think that this rule in particular is super important for anyone who tends to be a medium or a medical intuitive, because you are getting such sensitive information and such private information that you really want to be careful, because you can really scare and offend people with that level of private information. So look at the kind of information that's coming through and see how comfortable would you be if a random friend or a coworker all of a sudden said, oh, I know something about your health. Would you like to know? So just kind of putting yourself in the other person's shoes, because it really can catch people off guard and be very confrontational if you're just blurting out their personal business without being asked. And then the third thing that I was always taught, especially for healers out there, is not to heal anyone without their consent. And that's so hard for healers when we see suffering, or we see people who, are in pain, or we see, for me, it's car accidents. My little hands will go out to like heal strangers, and my guides will pull me back. They're like, you could be interfering with someone's soul journey. This could be their soul path to have this illness or injury. And by forcing healing energy on them without giving them a chance to have a say in the matter is, from Spirit's perspective, very invasive and inappropriate. So especially for healers out there, asking consent before you send healing energy is a much safer way to go, or sending love. So those are the three things that I always teach my clients, to have good psychic manners and boundaries.
Yeah, I love, how you both shared that, because, that we learn similarly, from our different teachers in a similar background with the psychic manners. And I'm so appreciative that they did teach us about psychic manners, because I do see where those lines get blurry out there. The thing that I would add with psychic manners is, as Peyton was saying, as a reader and healer, and Corey, it's like, yes, ask permission. You want to make sure if you're going into somebody's space, even if they're not intuitive, on a subconscious level, they can sense it. They can sense if you're trying to change the energy for them or looking into their space. So very similar. I usually don't go in, a lot of people that find out that I am intuitive are like, oh, so you're just like reading people all the time. Like, well, one, that's just sensory overload. So no. And then two, that's just really bad manners to like put myself in everybody's space all the time. And when I also think about psychic manners beyond what Peyton and Corey were sharing, I also think of it when we're starting to work with our guides, our healing masters, or any other angelic beings, source, things like that. I always like to set my own psychic boundaries. If you are working with healing guides, there's some people that fully let the energy come into their body, and it's very, their frequency is very different than our frequency. And so we teach them psychic manners. And for mediums, a lot of times they'll start to get messages from people on the other side when they're either about to fall asleep or about to wake up, and it really disrupts their sleep. And so they can actually teach people on the other side. I teach them how to set up office hours on the edge of their aura. So not only are they learning themselves psychic manners, for like Corey and Peyton were sharing, but you can also teach other beings psychic manners as well, who, they just see you as this bright light, like, oh, she can see us, she can tap into us, and they get excited too, but sometimes they don't realize that they can be intrusive in your space. And again, since you have a body in this realm, you have seniority, and so you get to call the shots as far as when you want to engage with that energy or not. And so for me, psychic manners is not just in giving readings and healings for people, because yes, you always want to ask permission I love how Peyton said it's like going through someone's purse, or it's like if you just went over to someone's house and started throwing out crap that you didn't think needed to be there. It's like you wouldn't just go and do that. And so you wouldn't do that in someone's space. But same thing, psychic manners, it's like you also get to set up boundaries for yourself. So it's not just about other people, but it's really setting up healthy boundaries for yourself on that energetic level as well. Anybody else want to add anything to that? I feel like this concept is so far in depth, and I feel like there's different instances that pop up, all along.
Well, I have something that my guides gave me, because I like to also heal spaces. If I'm going someplace like a salon or a doctor's office, I want to clear and heal that. And so I'm always asking my guides questions about, is this appropriate? Because I don't want to tromp on anyone's free will, or be in that gray zone where, we're invading anyone's space. I never want to do that. And so one thing that my guides taught me to do was, if I'm unsure whether it's appropriate to heal or to, mostly in a healing situation, or send energy, they said, offer it to that person's higher self as an offering. That way that person can take it or leave it, and you're not forcing energy on anyone. So, if I'm in doubt as to whether it's appropriate for me, I'll always go back to, I offer this. I'm not forcing energy on anyone. But then another way is also just to send it as love. I've always been taught that it's okay to send love energy to anyone, that does not infringe. So that's another way you can do it, especially if you're someone that it's hard to see people suffer, even if you don't know them well enough to ask if they would like a healing. You can always send them the energy of love, especially if you know Reiki, any other, of the healing practices. That's a good way to, I think, help without forcing energy on anyone.
Yeah, I love that. I love that technique of like asking their higher self, is this okay? How about you, Corey? You want to add anything to psychic manners?
Well, you know what, I was going to say the same thing as Peyton, was about asking the higher self, asking the higher self, permission or offering. I was going to say the same thing. And also, I always ask the higher self. I always ask the higher self before I ask the person, if I'm going to ask the person, just so that, if their higher self says no, then I know better than to even ask the person if they want a message or a healing. And of course, I love that. Love, sending lots of love. Prayer works too. Sometimes the best thing that we can do is send prayers. Oftentimes, I will ask the higher self, but when I'm working with, my angel guides, I was taught that it's under the law of grace, love, that you send a healing or an angel. So that's good psychic manners.
Absolutely. And I love that, Corey, too, because with just sending love and what comes to me when you say you always like to ask their higher self, because I've had situations where somebody came to me for a reading and I'm seeing something in their space that, yes, I could move out for them. And I ask them, is this okay? And sometimes they feel pressured to say yes. I don't know why, but everyone's one like, maybe she knows better than me. But when I look at their higher self is like, nope, she's not ready for that. So then I just, kind of do a basic energy healing that doesn't really change the karma for the person. But, sometimes it's good to ask the higher self, because the person might actually say yes, but their higher self, or we had a previous video about discernment where you might just get the sense of, they're not really, it's not a full yes from them. So it's always nice just to kind of pull back from the healing. Another thing that popped in my mind as far as psychic manners was when you're asking permission for healing and, you get the yes, and I've had people come in and they want a healing for a loved one, can you send them a healing? And so same thing, even if their loved one's not sitting in front of me, I'll ask their higher self and say, would you like a healing? And sometimes I get a yes, sometimes I get a no. And, you know, basic just healing is, I always just like to put them in their own little energetic bubble, ground out anybody else's energy, connect them to source. And it's literally just giving them their own energy back. I'm not going through and changing any of their energy, like shifting anything if they're not ready for it. And so you can basically I always just ask, you know, just connect them back up to source, connect them back to the universe, and just ask, like Peyton was saying, a blessing, or send them love. You know, we don't have to worry about the ins and outs of what healing they need. It's not always our decision to make for that person. I just send it back to source to let source take care of it. And that's also another thing that pops up too, as I'm saying that, is do the healings that people are asking you to do specifically, versus, you know, going different places. Like I've had readings where the person's, you know, I'm looking for one thing and they're like, well, let's work on this. I'm like, we're not working on that. Let's focus on this. So, you know, always answer the questions that people want you to answer when you're doing an energetic reading. You know, it's about the person. It's not about us and our ability. Like, you know, the other ladies were saying, it's really about their experience. So when we're giving readings and healings, it's not for our benefit. It's for the person sitting in front of us. You know, it's really about them and what their soul and their higher self is looking for.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And, you know, when Peyton mentioned about Reiki, you know, because the modality of Reiki is yes, you can send the energy and the body will take what it needs, and what it doesn't need will just fall away. Still ask the higher self, though. I still just always ask the higher self, no matter what.
Yep.
I just do.
Yep. Always get permission. Always ask the higher self.
Always get permission. Yeah.
Or give permission too, right? If it's your space, you give permission and you deny permission as well. So that's also psychic magic for yourself.
Yes. And that's the boundaries. I mean, I have actually experienced somebody trying to do a healing on me and I haven't given permission.
Yeah.
And I've had to turn it away. That's, you know, that's that boundary. And then having to talk to that person about psychic boundaries.
Yep.
I mean, well, it's boundaries too.
Yeah, you can see this a lot if you go to things like psychic fairs. If you go to things like, you'll get a lot of, you can feel people trying to scan you. It's a good place to see bad manners because if you're sensitive, you feel that. You know when someone is trying to scan you that doesn't have permission. And it's very offensive to anyone who's sensitive. You know, it is, we can feel that. We feel that energy in our body. We feel you poking around, you know, and so it's like going up and groping somebody, you know, it's not.
It is.
You don't want to be psychically handsy.
Yeah.
No. You don't want to be that guy or that lady. Psychically handsy. No. I love that. I kind of want to make that a shirt. Psychically handsy. Oh, that's too good.
Are going through people's purses.
Yeah, right.
80s purses.
But yeah, you definitely don't want to be psychic. No psychic bad manners. Just promise us we won't do that.
Exactly. So many people don't do it intentionally. You know, they do it out of enthusiasm or curiosity, but there are people who do it out of bad intention. You know, and so it's good to be aware that there are boundaries, because if my teachers hadn't taught me, it would not have occurred to me, because you get so excited when you first start that you want to just heal everybody and give everyone messages. And you may not be aware that, you know, there are some rules of the road to be a good psychic citizen.
Absolutely. A good psychic citizen. I love that. A good psychic citizen. I know. I love it. Well, that's why we're talking about it, right? This is why we're talking about it, because a lot of people don't know about it. Whether a lot of energy workers don't know about it.
Yeah. And they're, you know, that usually, like, you know, you both were saying, they're coming from a place of excitement. They're enthused that they're picking up on this energy. You know, they might be getting a message like, oh, you know, this is a really important message, but yeah, it's about the person's experience, and it's not always about us and our karma. It's about their life and their karma. So
I was just going to throw in one more thing that I've seen people get really confused about when they first start out. And that is, I've had some of my clients think that because they get a message, they are supposed to share it. that is their obligation to share it. And that's why I see a lot of lines getting crossed out of good intention, but misunderstanding. The message is for you. The message is for whoever receives it. And so then you have to sometimes, weigh the appropriateness of sharing what you get, because you're going to start to get information about everyone, about every situation. The more you do this, if you do it a lot, you start to read 24/7. And so, like we said in the last video, discernment, very important.
Exactly.
Fair.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's very good. Yeah. Just because you get a message doesn't mean that you deliver it. That's right.
Or
That's
they're ready
the higher
for
self.
it. Yep. They might be a beautiful message, but if they're not ready to hear it, they won't even resonate with it. So well, thank you again, ladies. I just love these talks with you. You're both just so brilliant, and I'm so glad we're doing these. If you found this video helpful, please like, share, send us your comments. We'd love to hear your feedback. And if there's any topics that you'd like us to touch on, please let us know. So thank you again for joining us for today's discussion on psychic manners. And we will see you next time. Thanks, everyone. Bye.